The scorching August sun beat down mercilessly on the busy intersection where Imani Johnson stood, her bright red t-shirt soaked with sweat as she held up plastic water bottles to passing cars. At 98 degrees, the asphalt was hot enough to burn through shoe soles, yet here she was, selling the very thing her body desperately craved but couldn't afford to consume. Ice-cold water, only $2, she called out weakly, her voice barely audible over the traffic noise. Her dark skin glistened with perspiration, and her vision started to blur around the edges. The small cooler at her feet contained her last hope for making enough money to pay this month's portion of her nursing school tuition. Cars zoomed past, their air-conditioned occupants barely glancing at the young woman whose legs had begun to shake. Imani wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dust and sweat. She had been standing here for 6 hours straight, managing to sell only 12 bottles. The math was simple and brutal. She needed at least 50 sales to make her payment deadline tomorrow. Her stomach cramped from hunger, having skipped breakfast to save money, and her throat felt like sandpaper. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was surrounded by water yet couldn't spare the $4 to buy 2 bottles for herself. Every bottle sold meant she was $2 closer to staying in school, $2 closer to becoming a registered nurse like her mother. The world started spinning as Imani raised another bottle toward a red light. Her knees buckled and she felt herself falling forward. The plastic bottles scattered across the hot pavement as her body hit the ground with a dull thud. Everything went black. Christopher Blake had been sitting in his air-conditioned Bentley, returning from a board meeting, when he saw the young woman collapse. Without hesitation, he pulled over and jumped out of his car, his expensive blue suit jacket forgotten on the passenger seat. He rushed to where Imani lay unconscious, her red shirt a stark contrast against the gray asphalt. "Miss, can you hear me?" he said, gently turning her onto her back and checking for a pulse. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Christopher looked around frantically for help, then noticed the scattered water bottles and the small sign taped to her cooler. Nursing school tuition fund, every purchase helps. Without thinking twice, he grabbed 2 bottles from the cooler, twisted one open and carefully lifted Imani's head to drizzle small amounts of water between her lips. He used his silk tie to create shade over her face, positioning himself to block the sun's brutal rays. "Come on, stay with me," he whispered, his voice filled with genuine concern for this stranger whose determination had literally brought her to her knees. Imani's eyes fluttered open, confused and disoriented. The first thing she saw was a man with kind brown eyes hovering over her, his face etched with worry. "Don't try to sit up yet," he said softly. "You fainted from the heat." "My water," she whispered, trying to look around. "I need to sell my water." Christopher felt his heart break a little. Even in her weakened state, her first concern was her business. "The water is fine. You need to worry about yourself right now." He helped her sit up slowly, supporting her back with his strong arm. "When did you last eat or drink something?" "This morning," she lied, not wanting to admit it had been yesterday. Christopher studied her face and knew she wasn't telling the truth. He could see the signs of dehydration and hunger in her sunken cheeks and the way her hands trembled. "I'm calling an ambulance," he said, reaching for his phone. "No," Imani said quickly, grabbing his wrist. "I can't afford that. I'm okay really. I just need to get back to work." The desperation in her voice stopped Christopher cold. Here was someone so determined to better herself that she was willing to risk her health. He looked at this beautiful young woman with her natural hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and her earnest brown eyes, and something shifted inside him. Do you ever wonder what drives someone to push their body to the breaking point just for an education? What would you do if you saw someone collapsing from exhaustion while trying to achieve their dreams? Please subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think Christopher should do next. "What's your name?" Christopher asked gently, still supporting her as she sipped the water. "Imani Johnson," she replied, her voice stronger now. "I'm sorry about the scene. I usually don't. I mean, this doesn't usually happen. How long have you been out here today?" "Since 7 this morning." She glanced at his expensive watch. "It's 3 now. I need to stay until at least 6 to have any chance of making my tuition payment." Christopher made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Imani, I want to buy all your water. Every single bottle." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, I have 43 bottles left. That's $86. "Then $86 it is." He pulled out his wallet and handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change." Imani stared at the money in her trembling hands, then looked up at this stranger who had appeared like an angel when she needed one most. I don't know what to say. "Thank you." "Say yes to getting out of this heat," Christopher replied with a warm smile. Let me drive you somewhere with air conditioning. For the first time in months, Imani felt hope bloom in her chest. She nodded gratefully, accepting his kindness without question. As Christopher helped her to her feet and gathered her things, neither of them realized that this moment would be the beginning of something extraordinary. Christopher's Bentley felt like stepping into another world. The cool leather seats and gentle hum of the air conditioning made Imani realize just how overheated she had become. She settled into the passenger seat, still clutching the $100 bill, afraid it might disappear if she let go. Where would you like me to take you? Christopher asked, adjusting the air vents to blow directly on her. Somewhere you can get a proper meal and rest. I should probably go home, Imani said quietly, though her stomach growled loudly enough for both of them to hear. She blushed, embarrassed by her body's betrayal. Christopher smiled kindly. When did you actually last eat? Imani looked down at her hands. Yesterday lunch. But that's okay, I'm used to it. No, it's not okay. Christopher's voice was firm but gentle. You almost passed out from dehydration and hunger. That's not something anyone should get used to. He pulled into the parking lot of a nearby family restaurant, the kind with checkered tablecloths and a menu full of comfort food. Please, let me buy you lunch. It's the least I can do after you scared me like that. Imani wanted to refuse, but the smell of food from the restaurant made her realize how desperately hungry she was. I can't let you do that. You already bought all my water. Imani, Christopher said, turning to face her fully. I'm Christopher Blake. I own Blake Industries downtown. Buying lunch for someone isn't going to break my budget, I promise. Blake Industries. Even Imani, who barely had time to watch the news between school and work, recognized that name. It was one of the largest companies in the city. She looked at Christopher with new eyes, taking in his perfectly tailored blue suit and expensive watch. You're actually serious, she whispered. Completely serious. And I'm also seriously worried about you. Please let me help. Inside the restaurant, Christopher insisted Imani order whatever she wanted. She chose a simple burger and fries, trying to pick something reasonably priced despite his protests. As they waited for their food, Christopher asked about her life, and Imani found herself opening up to this stranger who had shown her more kindness in 2 hours than she'd experienced in months. I'm in my 3rd year of nursing school, she explained, sipping her iced tea gratefully. My mom's a nurse too, but she's working double shifts just to keep up with the bills. My dad passed away when I was 16. I'm sorry for your loss, Christopher said sincerely. It sounds like you and your mother are incredibly strong. We try to be. I have a little brother, Tommy. He's 8. Mom wants to make sure he has opportunities we didn't have growing up. Imani smiled softly, thinking of Tommy's bright smile and endless questions about everything. And you're selling water to pay for school. Among other things. I work at a grocery store 3 nights a week, tutor high school kids on weekends, and sell water bottles whenever I can. It's still not enough, but I'm close. Only 1 more year and I'll graduate. Christopher felt a deep respect for this young woman who was working so hard to build a better life. What kind of nursing do you want to do? Pediatric nursing. I love working with kids. There's something about their resilience and hope that inspires me. Imani's eyes lit up as she talked about her dreams. I want to work in the children's hospital downtown eventually. When their food arrived, Christopher watched Imani eat with obvious hunger and relief. She tried to pace herself, but he could tell she was restraining herself from devouring everything immediately. Imani, can I ask you something? She nodded, wiping her mouth with her napkin. How much is your tuition payment that's due tomorrow? $800. I have $600 saved, but I needed to make at least $200 today from water sales. She paused. Thanks to you, I have $186 now. I'm still $14 short, but maybe I can find something to sell at home. Christopher reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his checkbook. What if I told you I could solve your tuition problem entirely? Imani's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? I mean, what if I paid your remaining tuition for this year and next year? All of it. The restaurant seemed to go quiet around them. Imani set down her fork, staring at Christopher in shock. Sir. Christopher. I can't possibly accept that. That would be thousands of dollars. $43,800 to be exact, Christopher said calmly. I looked up your school's tuition rates on my phone while you were in the restroom. That's almost $50,000. That's more money than my family sees in 2 years. Imani's voice was barely a whisper. Christopher leaned forward, his expression earnest. Imani, I make more money in a week than most people see in several years. This isn't a sacrifice for me, It's an investment in someone who clearly deserves it. But why? Imani asked, tears forming in her eyes. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're willing to risk your health to get an education. I know you want to help sick children. I know you're taking care of your family. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Imani wiped her eyes with her napkin, overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Christopher said simply. Let me help you achieve your dreams. Looking into his sincere brown eyes, Imani felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the possibility that everything might actually work out. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, I accept your help. Christopher smiled and began writing the check. There's just one condition. Imani's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. I want you to promise me that you'll take better care of yourself. No more skipping meals. No more standing in dangerous heat for hours. Deal. Relief flooded through her. Deal? She agreed, laughing through her tears. As Christopher handed her the check, their fingers touched briefly, and both felt a spark of something neither had expected. This was supposed to be a simple act of charity, but something told them both that it was becoming much more than that. The next morning, Imani stood in the financial aid office of her nursing school, holding Christopher's check with trembling hands. The amount seemed surreal, $43,800, enough to cover her remaining tuition and fees through graduation. Miss Johnson, this is quite generous, said Mrs. Patterson, the financial aid counselor, examining the check. Is this from a scholarship program? It's from a private donor, Imani replied, still processing that this was really happening. He wants to help me finish school. After completing the paperwork, Imani walked across campus in a daze. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't worried about money. She could focus entirely on her studies. She could even buy textbooks instead of sharing copies with classmates or relying on library reserves. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi Imani, this is Christopher Blake. I hope your tuition payment went smoothly. Would you like to have coffee later to discuss something? Christopher. Imani stared at the message, her heart racing. She quickly typed back, Hi Christopher. Yes, the payment went perfectly. Thank you again. I'd love to have coffee. When and where? They arranged to meet at a small cafe near campus at 2 o'clock. Imani spent the rest of the morning in classes, but found herself distracted, wondering what Christopher wanted to discuss. Surely he didn't expect anything inappropriate in return for his generosity. Her experience with him yesterday suggested he was genuinely kind, but her mother had always warned her that people sometimes had hidden motives. Christopher arrived at the cafe first, choosing a quiet corner table. He had traded his formal suit for dark jeans and a green button-down shirt, looking more approachable but still clearly successful. When Imani walked in wearing a blue sundress she'd saved for special occasions, his breath caught. She was even more beautiful when she wasn't exhausted and dehydrated. You look much better today, he said, standing to greet her. How do you feel? Like a completely different person, Imani admitted, settling into the chair across from him. I slept better last night than I have in months. It's amazing what peace of mind can do. Christopher ordered them both coffee and pastries, insisting again that it was his treat. I have a proposition for you, he said once they were settled. Imani tensed slightly, her mother's warnings echoing in her mind. Sensing her discomfort, Christopher quickly clarified. A job proposition. Completely professional and legitimate. She relaxed, feeling foolish for her suspicions. What kind of job? I need a part-time assistant for some of my community outreach projects. Blake Industries does a lot of charity work, and I could use someone with your background and perspective to help coordinate our educational initiatives. Christopher leaned forward, his enthusiasm evident. It would be 20 hours a week, flexible scheduling around your classes, and it pays $25 an hour. Imani nearly choked on her coffee. $25 an hour? That was more than double what she made at the grocery store. You'd be working directly with me, visiting schools, organizing scholarship programs, coordinating with educational nonprofits. Your insights as someone who's struggled to afford education would be invaluable. But I don't have any experience in that kind of work, Imani protested. You have the most important qualification. You understand what it's like to need help. That's more valuable than any business degree. Christopher smiled warmly. Besides, I'd be training you personally. You'd learn everything you need to know. Imani thought about what this could mean. Not only would she no longer struggle financially, but she'd be working in a field that aligned with her values. When would I start? Next Monday if you're interested. Your first project would be helping me review applications for our nursing scholarship program. The irony made Imani laugh. A nursing scholarship program. We established it last year, but we haven't had someone with your perspective reviewing applications. I think you'd be perfect for identifying candidates who really need and deserve the help. Imani felt tears of gratitude welling up again. Christopher, I don't understand why you're doing all this for me. He was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Yesterday when I saw you collapse, something clicked for me. I've been successful beyond my wildest dreams, but I've been so focused on business that I've forgotten why success matters. It should be about lifting others up, not just accumulating wealth. And you think I can help with that? I know you can. You've shown me what real determination looks like. You've reminded me that there are people fighting every day just for the chance to make their lives better. Christopher met her eyes directly. I want to be part of helping people like you succeed. Could this really be happening? Has your life ever changed completely in just 24 hours? Subscribe and tell me in the comments about a time when unexpected help came exactly when you needed it most. I accept, Imani said without hesitation. When you put it like that, how could I refuse? Christopher's face lit up with genuine happiness. Wonderful. There's just one thing I should mention. Here it comes, Imani thought, bracing herself. The job comes with a clothing allowance. You'll be representing Blake Industries at events and meetings, so you'll need professional attire. The company will cover that expense entirely. Imani stared at him in amazement. Even her clothes would be taken care of. Is there anything you haven't thought of? Actually, yes. I haven't thought of how to properly thank you. Thank me? Imani was confused. For what? For reminding me what really matters. For showing me that true strength isn't about having money, it's about persevering when you don't have it. Christopher's voice was sincere. You've given me more than I could ever give you. As they talked for another hour about the job details and her class schedule, both felt a connection growing that went beyond their professional arrangement. Christopher found himself drawn to Imani's intelligence and warmth, while she appreciated his genuine interest in making a difference. When they parted ways, Christopher walking her to her bus stop, both were smiling. I'll see you Monday morning at 9, he said. Welcome to the Blake Industries team. Watching the bus carry Imani away, Christopher realized that helping her was becoming one of the best decisions he'd ever made. And for Imani, looking out the bus window at the city passing by, everything looked different now. Brighter. Full of possibility. Neither of them suspected that their professional relationship was about to become something much more personal. Monday morning arrived with Imani standing outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Blake Industries, wearing a new navy blue blazer and matching skirt that Christopher had arranged to be delivered to her house over the weekend. The outfit fit perfectly, making her feel professional and confident in a way she'd never experienced before. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. I'm Imani Johnson, she told the receptionist. I'm here to see Christopher Blake. Mr. Blake is expecting you, the woman replied with a warm smile. Take the executive elevator to the 32nd floor. Rebecca will meet you there. The elevator ride felt like floating upward through clouds. When the doors opened, a woman in her early 30s with shoulder-length brown hair and a friendly smile was waiting. You must be Imani. I'm Rebecca Chin, Mr. Blake's executive assistant. He's told me wonderful things about you. Rebecca extended her hand warmly. I'll be helping you get oriented today. They walked through an office space that was both impressive and surprisingly welcoming. Large windows offered stunning views of the city, and the decor was modern but comfortable, with plants and artwork that made it feel more like a home than a corporate environment. Mr. Blake specifically requested that your office be near his, Rebecca explained, stopping at a door marked with a nameplate that read Imani Johnson, Community Outreach Coordinator. He wanted to be available for questions as you learn the role. Imani's office was beautiful, with a large desk, comfortable seating area, and a window view that took her breath away. This is really mine. All yours, Rebecca confirmed. Mr. Blake wants you to feel completely comfortable here. Christopher appeared in the doorway just then, wearing a charcoal gray suit that emphasized his tall frame. Good morning, Imani. How does everything look? It's incredible, Imani replied honestly. I've never had an office before. Well, you've earned it. Are you ready for your first day? They spent the morning going through files of scholarship applications. Christopher explained the criteria and process, but Imani quickly proved she had instincts for identifying students who truly needed help. Her own experiences gave her insights that impressed Christopher. This applicant says her family income is $40,000 a year for 5 people, Imani noted, reviewing one file. But look at her address. That neighborhood has rent that would eat up most of that income alone. She's probably understating how dire their situation really is. Christopher leaned over to see the application, and Imani caught a subtle scent of his cologne, something clean and expensive that made her momentarily lose her train of thought. "You're absolutely right," he said, not seeming to notice her brief distraction. "How did you catch that?" "I lived in that neighborhood until I was 12, Imani explained. "I know what it costs to survive there." By lunchtime they had reviewed 30 applications, and Imani had provided valuable insights on each one. Christopher suggested they eat in the company cafeteria, which turned out to be more like an upscale restaurant than typical office food service. "Tell me about your family," Christopher said as they settled at a table near the windows. "Yesterday you mentioned your mother and brother." "Mom's name is Linda. She's been a nurse for 15 years, working mainly in emergency rooms. She's the strongest person I know." Imani's face softened as she talked about her family. "Tommy is 8 and he's convinced he's going to be an astronaut. He builds rockets out of toilet paper tubes and launches them in our backyard." Christopher smiled at the image. "He sounds wonderful. Does he know about your new job?" "I told him I got a job helping a nice man give scholarships to students. He asked if that meant we could finally get a dog." Imani laughed. "I told him we'd see. What kind of dog does he want?" "A golden retriever. He's been asking for 3 years. Mom always said we couldn't afford the vet bills and food costs." Imani paused, realizing that excuse might no longer apply. "Golden retrievers are great with kids," Christopher said thoughtfully. They talked through lunch about everything from Imani's childhood to Christopher's business philosophy. She learned that he had built Blake Industries from a small tech startup his father left him, growing it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation through hard work and smart investments. "What about your family?" Imani asked. "Are your parents still alive?" Christopher's expression grew more serious. "My father died when I was 25, just as I was taking over the company. My mother lives in Florida now, enjoying retirement. No siblings." "That must have been hard, losing your father so young and having such big responsibilities." "It was. I threw myself into work completely. Sometimes I think I forgot to live my own life while I was building the business." Christopher looked at Imani directly. "Meeting you has reminded me that there's more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings." There was something in his tone that made Imani's heart skip a beat. She found herself looking into his warm brown eyes and feeling a connection that went beyond their professional relationship. "Mr. Blake," Rebecca appeared at their table. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but the city planning committee moved up your 3 o'clock meeting." "Of course they did," Christopher sighed. "Imani, I'm sorry to cut our lunch short." "Don't apologize. This is work and I understand that business comes first." As they walked back to the office, Christopher found himself wishing he could spend the entire afternoon talking with Imani instead of sitting through a boring city planning meeting. Her perspective on life was refreshing, and her genuine warmth was unlike anything he'd experienced in his usual social circles. "Before I forget," Christopher said as they reached Imani's office, "there's a company charity gala this Friday evening. It's one of our biggest fundraising events of the year. Would you be interested in attending as part of your orientation?" Imani felt her stomach flip with nervous excitement. A gala, she'd never been to anything remotely like that. "It would be educational for you to see how we handle our major donor relationships. Plus, your insights could be valuable for future events." Christopher hesitated, then added, "And I'd enjoy having you there." The way he said the last part made Imani feel warm all over. "I'd love to attend," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Perfect. The company will arrange for appropriate attire, of course." As Christopher headed off to his meeting, Imani settled back at her desk to continue reviewing scholarship applications. But she found herself thinking more about Friday's gala and less about the paperwork in front of her. For his part, Christopher found it nearly impossible to concentrate during the city planning meeting. His thoughts kept drifting to Imani's bright smile and the way she'd looked genuinely excited about attending the gala with him. He was beginning to realize that his feelings for her were becoming decidedly unprofessional. Friday evening arrived with Imani standing in front of her bedroom mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The dress Christopher's stylist had selected was a stunning emerald green that complemented her skin tone perfectly. The fabric was elegant but not overly formal, and the fit was so perfect it seemed tailored specifically for her. "Imani, baby, you look beautiful," her mother Linda said from the doorway. She was wearing her nurse scrubs, having just returned from her day shift before heading to her evening job. I still can't believe all this is happening. Sometimes I wonder if I'm dreaming, Imani admitted, adjusting the simple gold necklace that had been included with the dress. Mom, are you sure this is okay? What if people expect things from me that I can't give? Linda sat on the bed and pulled her daughter down beside her. Listen to me. You are smart, kind, and deserving of every good thing that comes your way. This Christopher man recognized your worth, and that says good things about him. But what if? No what ifs, Linda interrupted gently. You take this opportunity and you run with it. You've worked too hard to doubt yourself now. Tommy burst into the room wearing his pajamas, his eyes wide with amazement. Imani, you look like a princess, he exclaimed. Thank you, baby brother. Imani hugged him tightly. You be good for Mom tonight, okay? Can I stay up until you get home? Tommy asked. I want to hear about the fancy party. It's a school night, Linda said firmly. But you can hear all about it tomorrow. A car horn honked outside and Imani's heart raced. Christopher had offered to pick her up personally rather than sending a company car, saying he wanted to make sure she felt comfortable. Christopher stood beside a sleek black sedan, wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made him look even more handsome than usual. When he saw Imani walking toward him, his expression shifted to one of pure admiration. Imani, you look absolutely stunning, he said, opening the car door for her. That color is perfect on you. Thank you, she replied, feeling her cheeks warm. You clean up pretty well yourself. During the drive to the hotel where the gala was being held, Christopher briefed her on some of the key guests she'd be meeting. The mayor will be there, along with several city council members and heads of major nonprofits. Don't feel pressure to remember everyone's name, but do listen to their stories. You'll get ideas for future outreach programs. The hotel ballroom was transformed into an elegant wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting soft light over tables draped in white linen and adorned with fresh flowers. Imani had never seen anything so beautiful. Christopher, a distinguished older man, approached them as they entered. Good to see you, son. Mayor Rodriguez, Christopher replied warmly. I'd like you to meet Imani Johnson, our new community outreach coordinator. Imani shook the mayor's hand confidently, remembering her mother's advice to stand tall and speak clearly. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Ms. Johnson, Christopher's told me wonderful things about you. He says you're helping us identify students who really need our scholarship programs. I'm trying to help ensure the money goes to students who will use it to build better lives for themselves and their families, Imani replied. The mayor smiled approvingly. That's exactly what we need. Too often these programs help people who would have found a way anyway, while missing those who desperately need the boost. As the evening progressed, Christopher introduced Imani to dozens of influential people. She was surprised by how easily the conversations flowed. Her genuine passion for education and helping others resonated with everyone she met. You're a natural at this, Christopher murmured during a quiet moment as they watched the auction portion of the evening. I've seen experienced fundraisers who don't connect with people as easily as you do. It doesn't feel like work when you're talking about something you care about, Imani replied. The auction was raising money for various educational initiatives, and Imani watched in amazement as people bid thousands of dollars for items like vacation packages and artwork. When a week at a mountain cabin came up for auction, the bidding started at $5,000. That cabin belongs to my friend Marcus, Christopher mentioned casually. It's beautiful up there in the fall. Wait, I said no Marcus names. Let me change that. That cabin belongs to my friend Thomas, Christopher mentioned casually. It's beautiful up there in the fall. The bidding quickly escalated and Christopher raised his hand when it reached $15,000. Another man bid $16,000 and Christopher countered with $18,000. Christopher, you don't have to. Imani started to say. I want to, he said simply, raising his hand again when the other bidder went to $20,000. $25,000. The auctioneer called for any higher bids but the room fell silent. Sold to Christopher Blake for $25,000. Imani stared at him in shock. You just spent $25,000 on a vacation. Christopher leaned closer so only she could hear. I spent $25,000 on a donation to help kids get scholarships. The vacation is just a bonus. As the evening wound down, Christopher and Imani found themselves on the hotel's rooftop terrace, looking out over the city lights. The night air was cool and refreshing after the crowded ballroom. Thank you for bringing me tonight, Imani said. I learned so much and everyone was so kind. They were kind because you're genuinely interested in helping people. That's rare in my world, Christopher replied. Most people at these events are networking for business purposes. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both aware of the growing attraction between them but neither sure how to address it. "Christopher, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why aren't you married men like you, successful, kind, handsome? I would think women would be lining up." Christopher laughed softly. "Maybe that's part of the problem. Most of the women I've dated were interested in my money or status, not in me as a person." He turned to face her directly. "You're the first person in a long time who sees me as just Christopher, not as Blake Industries." Imani felt her heart racing. "Is that good or bad?" "It's everything," Christopher said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and promise. Both felt the pull toward something deeper, but both also understood that they were treading into territory that could complicate their professional relationship. "We should probably head back," Imani said reluctantly. "My mom will worry if I'm too late." "Of course," Christopher agreed, though he made no move to leave the terrace. As they finally walked back to the car, both were thinking the same thing. Their relationship was evolving into something neither had planned but both were beginning to hope for. 3 weeks into her new job, Imani had settled into a routine that felt almost too good to be true. Her mornings were spent in classes, her afternoons at Blake Industries working on scholarship programs and community outreach. The financial stress that had dominated her life for years was completely gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and possibility. But it wasn't just the job that was changing her life. It was Christopher. They had fallen into a pattern of having lunch together most days, sometimes in the company cafeteria but increasingly at small restaurants around the city. Christopher claimed it was important for her to understand the community they were serving, but Imani suspected he enjoyed their conversations as much as she did. "I have something to show you," Christopher said one Wednesday afternoon, appearing in her office doorway with an unusual excitement in his voice. "What is it?" Imani asked, looking up from a grant application she was reviewing. "A surprise. Can you spare an hour?" Imani saved her work and followed Christopher to the elevator. Instead of going down to the parking garage, they went up to the roof of the building. When the doors opened, Imani gasped. The entire rooftop had been transformed into a garden space with raised beds full of vegetables and herbs, comfortable seating areas, and a stunning view of the city. Several people were working in the garden, and children's laughter echoed from a corner where a small playground had been installed. "Christopher, what is this?" "It's our new community garden program," he explained, his pride evident. "Companies can sponsor rooftop gardens in low-income neighborhoods, providing fresh food and green space for families who don't have access to either." They walked toward the playground area, where Imani saw about a dozen children playing under the supervision of several adults. One little boy with bright eyes and a gap-toothed grin ran up to them. "Mr. Christopher, look what I grew," the boy said, holding up a small tomato. "Miss Rebecca said I could take it home to my mom." "That's wonderful, Kevin," Christopher replied, kneeling down to the boy's level. "Did you water it every day like we talked about?" "Yes, sir. And I talked to it too, like my grandma said to do." Imani watched Christopher interact with Kevin and felt something warm bloom in her chest. This successful billionaire was kneeling in the dirt, genuinely excited about a child's tomato plant. "Kevin, I'd like you to meet Miss Imani," Christopher said. "She's helping me find ways to help more kids like you." Kevin looked up at Imani solemnly. "Are you Mr. Christopher's girlfriend?" Imani felt her cheeks burn, but before she could answer, Christopher replied smoothly, "Miss Imani is my very good friend who helps me with important work." "She's pretty," Kevin announced, then ran back to the playground. Christopher and Imani looked at each other, both smiling at Kevin's directness. "Sorry about that," Christopher said. "Kids don't have much of a filter." "It's okay," Imani replied, though her heart was still racing from Kevin's innocent question. They toured the rest of the garden, with Christopher explaining how the program worked. Families could adopt raised beds, learning to grow their own food while building community connections. The children had their own special section where they could learn about plants and nature. "This is amazing, Christopher. How did you think of it?" "Actually, it was something you said about your brother Tommy. You mentioned that he builds rockets in your backyard, and it made me think about how important it is for kids to have safe outdoor spaces to explore and learn." Christopher picked a sprig of mint and handed it to her. "I realize that a lot of kids in this city don't have backyards, or if they do, they're not safe places to play." Imani crushed the mint between her fingers, releasing its fresh scent. "So you created safe backyards for them?" "We created them," Christopher corrected. "This whole program came from our conversations about what kids really need." The way he said "ours" sent a thrill through Imani. They were becoming a team in ways that went beyond their professional partnership. There's something else, Christopher said, leading her to a quiet corner of the rooftop. I've been thinking about your family situation. Imani tensed slightly. What about it? Your mother working double shifts, Tommy not having much time with her, the financial stress even though you're doing better now. Christopher paused, choosing his words carefully. What if there was a way to change that? What do you mean? Blake Industries partners with the hospital where your mother works. We're always looking for excellent nurses for our corporate health center. The pay is 30% higher than hospital wages, the hours are regular business hours, and the stress level is much lower. Imani stared at him. You want to offer my mom a job? I want to offer your mom an opportunity just like I offered you one. If she's interested, of course. Tears sprang to Imani's eyes. Christopher, you can't keep doing things like this for my family. Why not? His voice was gentle but firm. I have the power to help people I care about. Why wouldn't I use it? The phrase people I care about hung in the air between them. Both understood that their relationship had moved far beyond professional courtesy. Because Imani struggled to find the words. Because I don't want you to think I'm using you, or that my feelings for you are based on what you can give me. Christopher stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Imani, what are your feelings for me? The direct question caught her off guard. They had been dancing around their attraction for weeks, but neither had voiced it directly. Imani took a deep breath. I care about you. More than I should, considering you're my boss. And I care about you, Christopher replied softly. More than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. They stood there in the garden, surrounded by the sounds of children playing and adults working, both acknowledging what had been building between them. So what do we do about it? Imani asked. I don't know, Christopher admitted. I've never been in this situation before. From the playground area, Kevin's voice called out, Mr. Christopher, can you push me on the swing? The moment was broken, but something had been acknowledged between them that couldn't be taken back. As Christopher went to push Kevin on the swings, and Imani watched him laugh with the children, she realized she was falling in love with him. The question was, what would they do about it? You know that moment when you realize your feelings have shifted from gratitude to something deeper? When professional becomes personal and everything gets complicated? Subscribe and tell me in the comments. How do you know when friendship is becoming love? The following Monday morning brought unexpected challenges. Imani arrived at the office to find Rebecca looking unusually serious. Imani, Mr. Blake asked me to let you know he's been called into emergency board meetings all day. He wanted to make sure you knew he wasn't avoiding you. Imani felt a pang of disappointment. After their conversation on the rooftop garden, she had been looking forward to seeing Christopher and perhaps continuing their honest discussion about their feelings. Is everything okay with the company? Imani asked. There are some concerns about Mr. Blake's recent charitable spending, Rebecca said carefully. Some board members think he's being too generous with company resources. Imani's stomach dropped. Is it because of the money he's been spending on programs I've suggested? I don't know the details, Rebecca replied diplomatically, but her expression suggested Imani's guess wasn't far off. Throughout the day, Imani tried to focus on her work, but worry gnawed at her. What if her presence at Blake Industries was causing problems for Christopher? What if the board forced him to cut back on charitable giving? What if they thought she was a bad influence? Her fears seemed confirmed when she overheard two employees talking by the coffee machine. I heard Blake hired some girl he picked up off the street, one was saying. Apparently she's got him spending money on all kinds of programs that don't benefit the company at all. Probably sleeping with him for the perks, the other replied snidely. You know how these gold-digger types operate. Imani felt like she'd been slapped. She quietly returned to her office, her hands shaking as she closed the door. Was that what people thought of her? That she was using Christopher for money and status? Her phone buzzed with a text from Christopher. Sorry about today. Board meeting's running late. Can we have dinner tomorrow night to talk? Imani stared at the message for a long time before responding. I think we need to keep things professional from now on. She sent the message before she could change her mind, then immediately regretted it. But maybe it was for the best. Maybe she needed to step back before she caused more problems for Christopher. Meanwhile, Christopher was sitting in his third board meeting of the day, growing increasingly frustrated with the criticism he was hearing. Christopher, your charitable spending has increased by 400% in the past month, board member Patricia Stevens was saying. While we support your philanthropic goals, this level of expenditure is affecting our profit margins. The programs are making a real difference in the community, Christopher argued. Isn't that worth something? Of course it is, another board member, Robert Chin, interjected. But we have shareholders to consider. We need to see a return on investment. Some investments aren't measured in dollars, Christopher replied firmly. We're concerned that your judgment may be compromised, Patricia continued. We've heard about this girl you hired straight off the street with no relevant experience. Christopher's temper flared. Imani Johnson is one of the most qualified people I've ever met for community outreach. Her insights have been invaluable. Christopher, Robert said more gently, we're worried about you. You've changed since you hired her. You're taking risks with company money, making emotional decisions instead of business decisions. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Christopher said quietly. The room fell silent. Finally, Patricia spoke. Christopher, we're not saying you need to fire her. But perhaps it would be wise to reassign her to another department and bring in someone with an MBA to run community outreach. Christopher looked around the table at people he'd worked with for years, people he'd considered friends. I'll take your concerns under advisement, he said diplomatically, though inside he was seething. When he finally escaped the meetings and saw Imani's text message, his heart sank. Something had happened to make her pull away, and he suspected it had to do with the office gossip that inevitably surrounded any relationship between a CEO and an employee. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. He considered going to her house, but realized that might make things worse if she was concerned about appearances. The next day, Imani came to work early, hoping to avoid seeing Christopher until she figured out what to say to him. But he was waiting in her office when she arrived. We need to talk, he said simply. Christopher, I don't think that's a good idea. Please. Just hear me out. Imani reluctantly sat down, keeping her desk between them like a barrier. I know someone said something to upset you yesterday, Christopher began. And I know the board is putting pressure on me about our programs. So it's true, Imani felt her worst fears confirmed. I'm causing problems for you. You're not causing problems. You're helping me remember what's important in life. Christopher's voice was intense. Yes, the board is concerned about spending. Yes, there's office gossip. But none of that changes how I feel about you or the value you bring to this company. But what if they force you to choose? Imani asked quietly. Between your business responsibilities and whatever this is between us. Christopher was quiet for a long moment. Then I guess I'll have to decide what matters more to me. The weight of that statement hung between them. Imani realized that their relationship had reached a crossroads where they could either move forward together or step back to protect themselves. I don't want to be the reason you lose your company, Imani said. And I don't want to lose you because I'm afraid of what other people think, Christopher replied. They looked at each other across the desk, both understanding that their next decision would shape everything that came after. So what do we do? Imani asked. We figure it out together, Christopher said. If you're willing. Imani thought about her mother's advice to take opportunities and run with them. She thought about her feelings for Christopher and how much he'd changed her life. Most importantly, she thought about the fact that the best things in life were worth fighting for. I'm willing, she said quietly. Christopher smiled for the first time in 2 days. Then we'll face whatever comes next together. Neither of them knew that the biggest challenge to their relationship was still ahead, but they had made the crucial decision to face it as a team. Word of Christopher's commitment to their relationship spread quickly through Blake Industries, but not in the way either of them expected. Instead of criticism, they found themselves surrounded by unexpected allies. Rebecca was the first to speak up, approaching Imani's office the morning after her conversation with Christopher. I hope you don't mind me saying this, Rebecca began, but I've worked for Mr. Blake for 5 years, and I've never seen him as happy as he's been since you started here. Imani looked up from her computer, surprised. Really? Really? He used to work 16-hour days and barely speak to anyone except about business. Now he laughs, he asks about people's families, he seems human. Rebecca smiled warmly. Whatever you two have, it's good for him. More support came from unexpected places. Dr. Patricia Williams, the dean of Imani's nursing school, called personally to thank Christopher for his scholarship contributions. Mr. Blake, I wanted you to know that Ms. Johnson spoke about you at our faculty meeting. Her insights into identifying deserving students have revolutionized our approach to financial aid, Dr. Williams said during their phone conversation. She's created a more equitable system that truly helps those who need it most. Christopher felt vindicated. The criticism from his board seemed petty compared to the real impact they were making. The most significant support came from Imani's family. Christopher had been nervous about meeting them formally, but when Imani invited him for Sunday dinner, he accepted immediately. The Johnson family lived in a small but well-kept house in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Christopher arrived wearing jeans and a simple blue button-down shirt, carrying flowers for Linda and a build-your-own rocket kit for Tommy. "You must be Christopher," Linda said, greeting him at the door. "I'm Linda Johnson. Thank you for everything you've done for my daughter." "Thank you for raising such an amazing woman," Christopher replied sincerely. Tommy bounded into the room, his eyes lighting up when he saw the rocket kit. "Is this really for me?" "If it's okay with your mom," Christopher said, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "I heard you like building rockets." "I love rockets. I'm going to be an astronaut someday." Tommy's enthusiasm was infectious. "Will you help me build it?" "I'd be honored to help." During dinner, Christopher found himself completely at ease with Imani's family. Linda asked thoughtful questions about his business and his intentions toward her daughter, while Tommy peppered him with questions about everything from space travel to why rich people drove fancy cars. "Tommy, don't interrogate the man," Linda scolded gently. "It's okay," Christopher laughed. "I like his curiosity." After dinner, while Christopher and Tommy worked on the rocket kit at the kitchen table, Linda pulled Imani aside. "I like him," she said simply. "He's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone arrogant, someone who would look down on us. But he fits right in. He genuinely cares about Tommy, and more importantly, he looks at you like you're the most important person in the world." Imani felt tears prick her eyes. "Mom, do you think this can really work? We're from such different worlds." "Baby, love doesn't care about different worlds. What matters is whether you make each other better people." Linda hugged her daughter tightly. "And from what I can see, you do." The evening was such a success that Christopher found himself becoming a regular at Sunday dinners. Tommy began calling him Uncle Christopher, and Linda treated him like the son she'd never had. But perhaps the most meaningful support came from an unexpected source: the community itself. 3 weeks after Christopher and Imani had officially acknowledged their relationship to the Blake Industries staff, they attended the opening of their third community garden. The event was held in a neighborhood that had struggled with poverty and crime for decades. "I never thought I'd see anything this beautiful in our neighborhood," said Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly woman who had lived in the area for 40 years. "You two have given us hope." A teenager named Marcus approached them during the event. "Mr. Blake, Miss Imani, I just wanted to thank you. I got one of your scholarships and I start college next month." "Wait, I used Marcus again. Let me change that to avoid the restricted name." A teenager named Anthony approached them during the event. "Mr. Blake, Miss Imani, I just wanted to thank you. I got one of your scholarships and I start college next month." "That's wonderful, Anthony," Imani replied, genuinely excited for him. "What are you planning to study?" "Engineering. I want to design buildings that can withstand earthquakes, so people in poor countries don't lose their homes during disasters." Christopher and Imani exchanged a look. This was exactly the kind of impact they had hoped their programs would have. As the day went on, they met dozens of people whose lives had been touched by their initiatives. Children showed them vegetables they'd grown, parents talked about how the community gardens had brought neighbors together, and teenagers shared their college plans made possible by scholarships. "Look what you've built," Christopher said to Imani as they watched children playing in the new playground area. "What we've built," Imani corrected. "I never could have done any of this without you. And I never would have known where to start without your perspective." An older man approached them, wearing a neatly pressed shirt despite the obvious wear around the edges. "Excuse me, are you the couple behind all these programs?" "We work for Blake Industries," Christopher replied modestly. "Well, I wanted to thank you. My granddaughter got one of your scholarships. She's going to be a teacher." The man's eyes filled with tears. "3 generations of my family have struggled in poverty. She's going to be the first to break that cycle." As they drove home that evening, both Christopher and Imani felt overwhelmed by the positive response they'd received. "Christopher," Imani said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I love you." Christopher pulled the car over to a safe spot and turned to face her. "I love you too, Imani. I have for weeks." They kissed for the first time right there in the car, surrounded by the glow of streetlights and the knowledge that they had found something real and beautiful together. When they finally broke apart, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. "I have something to ask you." "What?" "Move in with me. Not because of money or convenience, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night." Imani felt her heart soar. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want that too." Neither of them could have imagined that in just a few days, everything would change in a way that would test their love like never before. Moving in with Christopher felt like stepping into a fairy tale. His penthouse apartment occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. But what impressed Imani most wasn't the luxury, it was how Christopher immediately set about making the space feel like theirs rather than his. "I had the guest bedroom converted into an office for you," he said, leading her through the spacious apartment. "I thought you might want somewhere quiet to study when you're working on assignments." The room was perfect, with a large desk positioned to take advantage of the morning light, built-in bookshelves, and a comfortable reading chair in the corner. "Christopher, this is too much." "It's not too much. It's what you need to succeed." He wrapped his arms around her from behind and she leaned back against his chest. "Besides, I like the idea of you being here when I come home from work." They fell into a routine quickly. Mornings began with coffee on the balcony, watching the sunrise over the city while discussing their plans for the day. Imani would attend classes while Christopher handled business meetings, and they'd reconvene at the office in the afternoons to work on their community programs. Evenings were spent cooking dinner together, something Christopher had rarely done before Imani moved in. She taught him how to make her mother's famous cornbread, while he introduced her to dishes he'd learned during business trips abroad. "I never realized how lonely I was before," Christopher admitted one evening as they cleaned dishes together. "This apartment felt like a hotel room where I happened to sleep." "And now," Imani asked, bumping his shoulder playfully. "Now it feels like home." 3 weeks after moving in together, Christopher surprised Imani with tickets to a weekend retreat in the mountains. They drove up Friday evening to a cozy cabin surrounded by tall pines and a lake that reflected the stars like scattered diamonds. "How did you find this place?" Imani asked as they sat on the cabin's porch, wrapped in blankets and sharing a bottle of wine. "It belongs to a friend of mine. Thomas offered it when I mentioned wanting to take you somewhere special." Christopher set down his wine glass and turned to face her. "Imani, there's something I want to tell you." "What is it?" "These past few months with you have been the best of my life. You've changed everything for me. The way I see my work, my responsibility to others, what I want my legacy to be." Christopher took her hands in his. "You've made me a better man." Imani felt tears spring to her eyes. "You've changed my life too. You've given me opportunities one never dreamed of, but more than that, you've shown me what real love looks like." "Imani Johnson," Christopher said, his voice thick with emotion, "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy." "I love you too, Christopher Blake. Completely and forever." They made love for the first time that night, slowly and tenderly, both understanding that they were crossing a threshold that would bind them together permanently. Afterward, they lay in each other's arms listening to the gentle lapping of lake water against the shore. "Christopher," Imani said softly, "what happens when I graduate in 8 months?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, do I stay at Blake Industries or do I go work at the Children's Hospital like I always planned?" Christopher was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do?" "I want to be a nurse. That's always been my dream. But I also love the work we're doing together." Imani turned to face him in the darkness. "I don't want to choose between my career goals and being with you." "Then don't choose," Christopher said simply. "What if we expanded our programs to include a free clinic for children? You could work as a nurse in our clinic and still be involved in the community outreach." Imani sat up in bed, excited by the possibility. A free clinic. Think about it. All these children in our community gardens and scholarship programs, many of them don't have adequate health care. You could provide medical care while I handle the business side. Christopher's enthusiasm grew as he spoke. "We could hire other nurses, maybe partner with your mom's hospital for complex cases." "Christopher, that would be amazing. We could really make a difference." "We're already making a difference. This would just be expanding it." They spent the rest of the weekend planning their future together, both personally and professionally. Christopher talked about wanting to start a family someday, and Imani shared her dreams of providing healthcare to underserved children. Everything seemed perfectly aligned. Sunday evening, as they packed to return to the city, Christopher pulled out a small velvet box. "Christopher," Imani gasped, "what are you doing?" "Imani, I had planned to wait longer to do this more formally. But being here with you talking about our future, I can't wait." He dropped to one knee on the cabin's porch. "Imani Johnson, will you marry me?" The ring was stunning but not ostentatious, a classic solitaire diamond that caught the last rays of sunset. But Imani barely noticed the ring. She was focused entirely on Christopher's face, full of love and hope and nervous excitement. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, Yes, Christopher, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood to kiss her as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. They held each other tightly, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of the commitment they'd just made. I can't wait to tell my family, Imani said, admiring the ring on her finger. I can't wait to tell the world, Christopher replied. I want everyone to know that the most amazing woman in the world agreed to be my wife. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, both lost in thoughts of wedding plans and shared dreams. Neither could have imagined that within 24 hours, their entire world would be turned upside down by a revelation that would test their love in ways they never expected. As they pulled into the parking garage of Christopher's building, Imani's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but something compelled her to answer. Hello, is this Imani Johnson? Yes, this is Imani. Ms. Johnson, this is attorney Janet Morrison. I've been trying to reach you about your grandmother's estate. Imani's blood ran cold. My grandmother died when I was 10 years old. I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, but I'm calling about your paternal grandmother, Helen Johnson. She passed away last month, and you're listed as her sole heir. The words hit Imani like a physical blow. Her father had told her that his mother had died years ago. I think there's been a mistake. I don't believe so. Could you come to my office tomorrow morning? There are some things we need to discuss. Imani hung up the phone in a daze, staring at Christopher as if she'd never seen him before. What was that about? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I think, Imani said slowly, our lives are about to change again. But neither of them could have predicted just how dramatically. Monday morning found Imani and Christopher sitting in the law office of Janet Morrison, a distinguished woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind but serious eyes. The office was filled with law books and family photos, creating an atmosphere that was both professional and welcoming. Ms. Johnson, Attorney Morrison began, I understand this comes as a shock. Your grandmother Helen Johnson was quite specific that you shouldn't be contacted until after her death. But my father told me she died when I was a child, Imani said, still struggling to process this information. According to her will, there was a falling out between your grandmother and your father when you were very young. She respected his wishes not to have contact, but she never stopped caring about you. Attorney Morrison opened a thick file. She followed your life from a distance, Ms. Johnson. She knew about your academic achievements, your struggles to pay for school, even about your recent engagement. Christopher and Imani exchanged surprised glances. How could she know about our engagement? Christopher asked. We just got engaged yesterday. Attorney Morrison smiled slightly. Your grandmother had resources, Mr. Blake. She was quite wealthy, and she used those resources to stay informed about her granddaughter's life. Wealthy how? Imani asked weakly. Ms. Johnson, your grandmother Helen was the founder of Johnson Medical Supply Company. Perhaps you've heard of it? Imani's mouth fell open. Johnson Medical Supply was one of the largest medical equipment companies in the country. She had seen their logo in every hospital and clinic where her mother worked. She founded the company 50 years ago with a small loan and built it into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, Attorney Morrison continued. When she sold it 5 years ago, she became one of the wealthiest women in America. Christopher reached for Imani's hand, sensing her shock and confusion. She left everything to you, Ms. Johnson. The estate is valued at approximately $2.8 billion. The room fell completely silent. Imani stared at Attorney Morrison as if she had spoken in a foreign language. I'm sorry, Imani said faintly, did you say billion? Yes. There are some conditions, of course. The inheritance is structured to ensure you can't be taken advantage of. There's a trust fund that will provide you with $50 million immediately, and the rest will be transferred to you gradually over the next 10 years. Imani felt dizzy. $50 million. The conditions are quite reasonable, Attorney Morrison continued. You must complete your education, you cannot give away more than 10% of the inheritance without trust approval, and you must visit the grave of your paternal grandfather once a year to honor the family legacy. Christopher was watching Imani carefully, seeing the shock and confusion on her face. Ms. Morrison, could you give us a moment? Of course. The attorney stepped out of the office, leaving Christopher and Imani alone. Imani, breathe, Christopher said gently, pulling his chair closer to hers. Just breathe. Christopher, this is insane. Yesterday I was a nursing student working part-time. Today I'm supposedly worth billions of dollars. Imani's voice was rising with panic. What does this mean for us? What do you mean? I mean, what if people think you're only with me for my money now? Imani stood up and began pacing. What if they think I was secretly rich all along and manipulating you? Christopher stood and caught her hands, stopping her frantic movement. Imani, look at me. She met his eyes, seeing nothing but love and concern there. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? He asked. When I offered to pay your tuition. I said I didn't know what to say. And do you remember what I said? Imani thought back to that moment that seemed like a lifetime ago. You said to say yes. That's right. And my feelings for you haven't changed because of money, whether it was mine helping you or yours that you didn't even know about. Christopher cupped her face in his hands. I fell in love with a woman who was willing to collapse from heat exhaustion rather than give up on her dreams. I fell in love with someone who sees the best in people and fights for those who need help. Money doesn't change any of that. Tears spilled down Imani's cheeks. But everything's different now. No, it's not. We're still the same people. We still love each other. We still want to help others and build a life together. Christopher smiled softly. The only difference is that now we have even more resources to make the world a better place. Attorney Morrison knocked gently and re-entered the office. Have you had time to process this? As much as anyone could, Imani replied, wiping her eyes. What happens next? There are papers to sign, accounts to set up, and quite a few legal matters to handle. But there's something else. Attorney Morrison pulled out a sealed envelope. Your grandmother left you a letter. With shaking hands, Imani opened the envelope and unfolded several pages of elegant handwriting. My dearest Imani, she read aloud, if you're reading this, then I have passed away and you have learned the truth about your inheritance. I want you to know that watching you from afar has been one of the greatest joys of my later years. Your determination, your kindness, and your commitment to helping others remind me of myself at your age. I started Johnson Medical Supply because I wanted to help people get the medical care they needed. I'm leaving this fortune to you because I trust you to use it the same way. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't deserve this money or that it changes who you are. You are remarkable just as you are. I only wish I could have known you personally, but I'm proud of the woman you've become. Use this gift to continue building the beautiful life you've already started. All my love, Grandmother Helen. Imani was crying openly now, and Christopher had his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes moist. She was watching out for you all along, he said softly. Ms. Johnson, Attorney Morrison said gently, there's one more thing. Your grandmother left specific instructions that if you were engaged or married when you received this inheritance, your fiancé or husband should be investigated to ensure his intentions are genuine. Both Christopher and Imani looked up in surprise. She hired a private investigator to look into your relationship, Mr. Blake. The report shows that you began helping Ms. Johnson and developing feelings for her long before anyone could have known about this inheritance. Your grandmother was satisfied that your love is genuine. Christopher shook his head in amazement. She thought of everything. She was a remarkable woman who wanted to protect her granddaughter, Attorney Morrison agreed. As they left the law office several hours later, their heads spinning with legal documents and financial information, Christopher and Imani walked slowly to their car. So, Christopher said, how does it feel to be richer than me? Imani stopped walking and stared at him. Oh my God, I am richer than you. By about a factor of 3, Christopher confirmed with a grin. This is so weird. Weird doesn't begin to cover it. Christopher opened the car door for her. But you know what? What? I love you just as much as a billionaire as I did when you were selling water bottles on street corners. Imani laughed, feeling some of the tension leave her body. And I love you just as much now that I can afford to buy my own dinner. As they drove home, both were quiet, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. But gradually, a sense of excitement began to replace the shock. Christopher, Imani said as they pulled into their building's garage, think about what we could do with this money. What do you mean? I mean we could build that children's clinic. We could expand the scholarship programs. We could create community gardens in every underserved neighborhood in the city. Imani's voice grew more excited as she spoke. We could change thousands of lives. Christopher smiled, recognizing the passionate determination that had first attracted him to her. We absolutely could. And you know what the best part is? What? Now no one can ever say that you're with me for my money or that I'm with you for yours. We're together because we love each other, period. Christopher leaned over and kissed her deeply. Mrs. Future Blake, I think this is going to be the beginning of the most amazing adventure. Mrs. Future Blake, Imani repeated, trying out the sound of it. I like that. 6 months later, Christopher and Imani stood in the same community garden where they had first acknowledged their feelings for each other. But now they were surrounded by hundreds of guests, including Imani's family, Christopher's mother who had flown in from Florida, and dozens of people whose lives had been touched by their programs. Tommy, now 9 years old and the proud owner of a golden retriever puppy named Apollo, served as ring bearer. Linda Johnson, who had accepted the job at Blake Industries and now worked normal hours with excellent benefits, walked her daughter down the aisle. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of two people who have shown us that love and generosity can truly change the world." As Christopher and Imani exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love, honor, and continue building a better world together, neither could have imagined that their story had started with a chance encounter on a sweltering street corner. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister announced. "Christopher, you may kiss your bride." As they kissed for the first time as a married couple, the crowd erupted in cheers. But the most enthusiastic applause came from Kevin, now a thriving student in their scholarship program, and Anthony, who had returned from his first year of engineering school to attend the wedding. Later, as they danced together at their reception, Imani whispered in Christopher's ear, "Do you think your grandmother Helen would have approved?" "I think she would have loved you almost as much as I do," Christopher replied. "And I think she would be proud of what we're building together." Looking around at their guests, a mix of billionaires and street vendors, professors and students, nurses and executives, all celebrating together, Imani realized that they had created something beautiful. A community built on love, generosity, and the belief that everyone deserved a chance to succeed. "What are you thinking about?" Christopher asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about how perfect this all is," Imani replied. "A year ago, I was selling water bottles hoping to make enough money for tuition. Tonight, I'm a married billionaire planning to change the world. Any regrets?" Imani looked into her husband's eyes, seeing nothing but love and endless possibility. "Not a single one." As the evening ended and they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Italy, Imani caught the bouquet she had thrown and handed it to a young woman who looked remarkably like she had a year ago, determined, hopeful, and deserving of all the love and opportunity the world had to offer. "Your turn," Imani whispered to the girl with a smile. And somewhere in the city, another love story was just beginning.